Okay, good morning. Today we're going to take a look at how do I find targets on Bitcoin or any other asset. How do you find the targets that you're looking for? To do that, I'm going to I'm going to demonstrate on this Bitcoin chart. This is a 1-day chart of Bitcoin, and I'm going to use a combination of tools. I'm going to use Elliott Wave and Fibonacci. Let's get started. So first of all, I'm going to take a look at the chart and see where I think there might be some waves. Now, I'm not an expert in Elliott Wave, but just basically using what I know, I could say maybe this is wave 1. This would be the wave 2 correction. This is wave 3, and we're working on wave 4 right here. Okay, and then we'll just put wave 5 off to the side because we don't know where that is yet. But basically, we're considering that this is wave 1, 2, 3. We're inside of a correction right now, which isn't complete, or it may be complete. We don't know. And then we've got wave 5 off here to the side. So how do we use that for targets? How do we use that information to determine where we think we want to, where the correction ends, and also, if we were to open along, where do we put our target price? Where do we get out? Okay, that's really important inside of if you're going to trade actively. So now that I've got an idea of where I think the waves might be, I'm going to rely on Fibonacci tools to give me some ideas. So I'm going to start with drawing an impulse wave for the first wave. So I'm going to click where the 0 level here is, where the beginning of the wave is, just right up to where the top of the wave is. Okay, so it's just from this point to this point is where I drew that Fibonacci. Okay, I'm going to expand this a little bit, give me a little more room. Okay. So, and then we take a look at where did 2 retrace? Well, 2 retraced right around the 0.5 level. If we drew the 0 to 1 here, 0.5, 0.618, you're just looking for some validation, okay? This may not seem important, but the more validation you have for your technical analysis, the more strongly you can rely on it. So it's helpful to have that validation for what you're looking at. And the fact that the 2 wave retrace at the 50% level is pretty good validation that what you're drawing is working out. You're always looking for that validation of your models, okay? So then we take the next wave, we go from 2 to 3, okay? That's your next impulse wave. Now, before we do that, actually, let me back up. So had you drawn in the wave 1 and the wave 2, and maybe this wave got started, and you're like, oh, this looks like the correction might be over. What do I do? Let's pretend that these other candles aren't here. This would be an opportunity where you could draw this in. Now, you'd be working with very little data if you were only looking at the candles from this level and to the left. But what you could do is, considering that this might be wave 1 and the dip's over, you would draw in your impulse wave. Now, if you were to open along here, would be your target? Well, your target would be either the 1618, which isn't a whole lot there. It probably wouldn't work for a wave 3 because wave 3s are usually the longest, or a 2618. That would probably be your target if you were to open along inside this area. Okay, this is how you find your target. You want to look for a validation of the waves, and then look for 2618 or 3618 as your targets. And take a look. Wave 3 went up to about the 2618 area, and then it retraced. So that gives us some additional validation. Let's draw in wave 3 Fibonacci. So we go from the beginning of wave 3 to where wave 3 ended. Okay. And then we take a look at where did wave 4 retrace to? Well, right now it looks like wave 4 retraced perfectly to 618, right? Now this may not be complete. It may go further down, but right now it's sitting at 618. So that's further validation for your model. Okay, so we like that. We like to see that kind of validation as we go. So now what's next? Now we want to project where wave 5 is. So if we think that wave 4 is valid and we may have bottomed and you want to open a long, where do you put your target for your long? Well, this is where you take the wave 3 and you see the 618 up here. So you could take the 618 up to here, and that would be your area. That would be your target area for a long. If you open along in this correction, then this would be your target. Okay. potentially right now the price has already bounced a little bit. It's about 14,000. We drag that up to, that's 70%, potentially 70%. So that potentially is a 70% gain. And then you would take your stops. If you were to open that long, you know, I don't know, you could go all the way down to 382. That'd be a pretty deep correction, but it is possible. That's probably a little more risk. It's like 2-to-1 reward, not so great. You know, you could see like maybe it won't revisit that 10%. Okay. So that's one potential way to do that. Now there's some more information we can add, some more validation we can look for. And so what we did is we did impulse wave 1, and then we did the impulse wave for 3, right? And what we can do is because this is a trend, we can do a trend-based Fibonacci as well, which adds a little more data. And the way that we do that is we take the first 3 points of the entire Elliott wave. So you have the bottom of wave 1, the top of wave 1, and then the bottom here at 2. So I'm going to click over here at those 3 points, those 3 levels. So I'm going to click once, twice, and then that's the third time. And this draws in a trend-based Fibonacci. It's a little different than the impulse waves. I'm not just dragging from top to bottom. I'm actually doing a 3-click trend. And what I'm looking for there is I'm looking for further validation on these white levels, right? So this didn't quite line up. It lined up with 4, which isn't necessarily much validation for us. The 2618 is kind of in the area of 3. So, you know, I would consider that maybe some slight validation. But again, you want to look for 3618 is lined up over here, somewhat in the area of your target. Okay, it's at the bottom of your target. So I think that's more validation. So what happens when you hit the target? Well, you would expect probably an ABC correction. Okay, like a, you know, some kind of a correction. So you would want to ride this from here to here and then take profit, you know, assuming that the Elliott wave is going to play out and there's going to be some psychological market resistance at that level and a correction. Okay, so how do you play the correction? How do we play that correction? So there's a couple of different ways to do it. I like to draw Fibonacci from the top of where I think wave 5 is going to complete. Just retrace the entire wave 5. Okay, and then I would put my target for an ABC correction somewhere like in this area. Okay, so what I'm saying here, if I draw it out, is I think it's going to come up, you know, where it is today, up here for about a 70%, and then like a B, and then, you know, something like a C. Okay, somewhere in there, and then, you know, it'll start a new cycle. So that's what I would predict, you know, using these models. Now, some people, rather than just use a wave 5 retracement, so from 0 to 100, just retracing, you know, the entire wave 5. Some people say you should retrace the entire move. So from 5 all the way down to 0. Okay. Now that gives you a much broader area for retracement. You would assume your retracement would be, you know, down in here. Okay. I don't use that as often. I usually just do wave 5 depending. If wave 5 is really small or it's a smaller move overall, you know, then I might use the entire trend. But this is something I don't know. I just don't see that. So that's how I predict prices. You know, now with Bitcoin, obviously, you know, be wise with your risk management, stuff that you probably already know, but it's just got to be said because it can move pretty violently in either direction. And with the CME in less than 24 hours away from today, who knows what's going to happen. But as a tutorial, I wanted to share how I predict targets and how I trade and how I pick my spots. And using Elliott waves and Fibonacci's, this is what I do. So leave a comment, subscribe, and happy trading.